I'm James, so I work with the wonderful people that you see here on some projects, and I am really just here to let them speak about all the cool work that they've done. So I do just want to start off by asking if Zico and Colin, if you can give us some background on the history of how harm reduction works, who is doing harm reduction locally or statewide before the funding became available through OAA.
Hey y'all, how's it going? Thanks for coming. So I guess, and I'll let Zico speak a little bit more to this, but harm reduction has been happening in Richmond and beyond for years and years, long before the opioid abatement funds got here. Health Reaid's program in particular has been operating in Richmond since 2018 due to a 2017 legislative initiative that allowed for needle exchange in the state of Virginia. Before that, people were passing out needles to their peers, to their friends on the streets. Harm reduction comes from a long lineage of resistance and work, Black Panther Party, through the AIDS crisis. People have been doing needle exchange long before it was legalized, and we come from that long that long tradition. So, but since we've been operating in 2018, we provide services under Virginia statute. We provide safer use supplies, needles, Narcan, now test strips, which we will probably talk more about on this panel, because we're seeing more and more different types of test strips as the drug supply is changed the landscape here in Richmond and beyond. And just want to give a shout out to the CHR team that's in the audience right now. That's our team back there. If y'all could stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up. And Dia in the back. Jeanette. These are the folks that have been doing the work. We do it week after week. We actually have a week off, and it's a much needed week off from doing the direct services. What am I missing?
What was the question again?
History of harm reduction in Richmond.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, I'm Zico. So Colin and I were talking about this one day last week, and I was like, well, what is the history besides what has not been legalized, right? It's important for me to talk about people from around the way who made sure that people were safe. So this means a woman over in Southside. I'm going to say her name because she's no longer with us, but God bless her, Ms. Naomi, because 24 hours, 7 days a week, this woman's door was open to make sure that people had safer use and supplies. And that's important to note because for me, harm reduction is super cultural, right? The candy ladies around the way. So before VCU acquired Monroe Park, when Food Not Bombs used to hang out on Sundays, you would see different grassroots organizations handing out clean supplies. And this was long before I understood the significance of it. And then when I think about it now, these are like unsung heroes. You know, their only missions were to make sure that people were safe, didn't contract or transmit HIV, Hep C. So, you know, these are long-standing organizations, men and women who donated their own money to these efforts and these programs. And so we're just lucky enough to be able to pick up the mantle where they left off and do it under the statutes of VDH. Because like I have to remind people a lot, you know, we get a lot of, well, you know, you're enabling people. Well, you know, people are gonna do their thing regardless. You know, our only mission is to make sure that people stay safe. And so that's what we do.
All right, thank you. So I think it would be helpful to kind of start with some context on what these opioid abatement funds are. And so Jason and Anna, I just want to kind of give it over to y'all to talk a little bit about how the OAA is structured. Where does this money come from? How does it all work?
It's on. It's on already.
Hot mic.
It's hot. It's hot. Yeah, I really struggled with this to do this in a way that isn't like just like amazingly boring because it's complex. And I think we have a tendency to oversimplify things that are complex to fit it in a short period of time. So what I'll say is that I'm going to try to hit the high points and just know that there is a lot there with opioid settlement funds, but it's worth the time learning them because I would love for everybody in this room and to be paying attention, right? Every locality across the United States are getting opioid settlement funds, and these funds can be transformative for communities or they cannot be. And the more people that are involved and the more people that are pressing for solutions that actually impact people who use drugs and are actually gonna work and make an impact, the better. All right, so let me give you the brief. This is the city of Richmond. We get some funds directly to the city from the distributors, like Sackler, like Janssen, like CVS. We also get funds from the Opioid Abatement Authority that come, I know this is confusing. One of the questions was, why do these funds not come directly to individuals who were harmed, right? And that's a super important question. The way the lawsuits were structured initially were not as a class action lawsuit, but as a public nuisance case. So lawyers sound off on why that was a better legal strategy for this, but that's the strategy they took nonetheless. And the pros of that are that the aim of that money is to build structural systems that are collective and bigger than any one person can do alone. And then the tremendous responsibility of that is that it has to get back to the communities that are directly impacted. And that's what's not always happening. All right, let's keep going, right? Enough, you guys. More. Yeah, that's just a statewide outlook on how the Opioid Abatement Authority distributes the funds. You can keep going. Because I think we talk a lot in abstract, but I wanted to put some actual numbers to it, like how much money is the city getting? So overall, that's about $14 million over 20 years. For some people, that's less money than they think. For some people, it's more. But I just think it's important that we have like an actual tangible context. And if you can go to the next slide for me, James. The way that's distributed, it's front-loaded, right? So in the early years, Chesterfield County, Henrico County, the city of Richmond are maybe getting payments of about like $1 million towards, when we're in 2035, it's probably closer to like 200,000.
The way that we get the money that's at that state level, so it's earmarked. Each community, whether it's a city or a county, has a certain amount of funds that were allocated to them, but they are held in reserve at the state level. So we actually have to apply for those funds, even though they're technically ours, which is whatever. Oversight is what it is. I might have some feelings about it. I think Anna might have some feelings about it some days, but. And then the third way that we're able to get funds are through cooperative agreements with multiple jurisdictions. Those are more like competitive grants where you come up with a program, you apply, you have matching funds from the two localities, but then the funds that were reserved by the OAA at the state level then come down to these community grants. We like to say that's where the big money is.
All right, and I also wanted to ask if you could speak on how the OAA has kind of been playing a role specifically in the context of federal funding cuts and what it's been doing specifically around the stuff that we do here.
I mean, I can't say what the VOAA is doing with that funding landscape, but it's something that I think is really important for jurisdictions to keep in mind because we do have to fill those holes, right? There's so much funding cut to CHR programs in the state, right? And we can't replace all of that money, but that has to be a focus, right? We have to be really attentive to those programs that are really meaningful and that are doing direct services that have been cut from this horrific funding landscape.
Can I speak to that? Do it? All right. Just from speaking specifically from an organization that receives a lot of dollars from states, specifically the Virginia Department of Health. Health Brigade last year lost, I think it was $1.87 million in our funding, which is typically around 4 million or 4.5 million. So a huge chunk. And part of those funds were Ryan White funds, which are funds specifically earmarked for people living with HIV/AIDS. I think I was in this room last year just talking about the impact of that. What that's meant is that our Ryan White program that gives access to over 800 individuals that live in the city of Richmond with HIV/AIDS, it means that program was dismantled. And all the programs in Richmond were functionally dismantled, meaning there's no funding to help support these individuals. HIV funding is how needle exchange programs used to get their money. We've effectively said that we don't care about the spread of HIV or people that live with HIV/AIDS through the cutting of that funds. The fact that we're able to be supported by the opioid abatement funds and our programs means that our program can exist and we can help continue to stop the spread of HIV and AIDS, because if needle exchange programs don't exist, hepatitis C and HIV will spread rampantly. So it's been essential for our program and for our organization because Health Brigade has been able to implement those funds and help sustain all the other programs, not just ours.
Thank you. All right. I do kind of want to switch gears and focus more so on a specific project that you all have been working on. So Zico and Colin, can you kind of give us a little bit of background on how the idea for the harm reduction vending machines got started?
Oh, look at us. So, Colin and I have been running this program together for 5 years and some change. And through lunches at our desk and coffee and running errands, we had this bright idea, what we thought was this really novel idea. You know what, we need some vending machines in Richmond that will just distribute Narcan and menstrual products and toiletries 24/7. Yes, we're so smart. We gave each other 5 and we were like, yes, we can do it. And so we started doing some research behind it and connecting with other programs across the country. And when they started talking about specs and weights and dimensions, we were like, what? We just wanted to hand out some Narcan. So we realized that the capital needed to produce these machines the way that we felt they should be operating within Richmond. I was like, yeah, we need some help with this. We were already connected to the task force previously, and we backed out for our own personal reasons. When the new iteration came through, it was compelling enough for us to be like, okay, we can do this. We pitched it. We pitched it to Dominic and Amy Popovich, and we had 2 asks. We said, okay, we'll come back if we can throw a really big block party in Churchill, and if y'all will help us get these vending machines. They were like, yes. We were like, oh, wow, that was easy. And so this is when the work began. Jason did a ton of work. Jasmine did all these different things. Tamara Jones, Joanna Cirillo, and then Anna came in, and it really started taking shape and fruition. And so we have 3 fully operating machines right now in the city at Southside Plaza, 25th Street Library, and downtown at Social Services Building, right? Huge. And so just to work within this collective of people who have the same vision and who believe in the same things, that drug user health is important, right? Because recovery means going to these machines. Recovery does not just mean abstinence-based. Recovery means when people come up to the table to get condoms from us or test strips or granola bars, that is recovery. And so working amongst this coalition of very brilliant human beings has been life-changing, because we don't work on the weekends. We let our team work from home on Fridays, because the work week is heavy and sometimes it's chaotic. And so people are able to access these machines at 2:30 a.m. on a Saturday night. And that's important because care should not operate within a schedule, right? So that's what we've been doing. And I'm just I ride past the machines all the time. I see people using them. When Mark Taylor right here, when he sees that the machines are empty, he texts me and sends me a picture of the empty machine. Zico, call Jason, let him know that it needs to be restocked, and by the end of the day, it's done. And so this is what collective community and drug user health looks like. And so I'm just over the moon about it because I did not have access to Narcan. When I was still using, Narcan was reserved for my more affluent friends in Hanover County, right? Did not have access to it. And I've been brought back and revived by Narcan. So this is why this is important, because it's connected to Mosby Court. It's connected to Southside. It's connected to people who have to drive down Hull Street Road. This is why it's important, because care and life-saving medication should never be relegated to people who have certain zip codes or complexions. So this is why we continue to do what we do.
I want to ask, I think you touched on it a little bit, but Jason, do you want to just talk a little bit about what's in the vending machines and how those things, how they got decided to be put in?
Sure. It's changed a little bit for the better. The decision of what goes into the machines, so the majority of the real estate is taken up by naloxone. Because that stuff saves lives. Also, it's OAA funding. That has to be sort of primary. It doesn't have to be exclusively opioid related, but it does have to be primary. But there's a lot of discussions in the Harm Reduction Task Force little subcommittee in our Richmond Opioid Task Force, talking about what needs to be in there. And the conversation was really organic. And basically, it was like, we need to put things in there that people might need when they're walking around and they need some shit, right? So Narcan, drug testing supplies, initially it was just fentanyl. And that was fine initially because that was primarily what was in the drug supply. But you can get a toothbrush and toothpaste, and you can get feminine hygiene products, and you can get some hand wipes, and you can get like a little first aid kit that is not very robust, but it has some Band-Aids and shit in it. It's a little box that you can also use for whatever else you want to put in this box. Street drug supply changes pretty frequently, and so we now have fentanyl test strips in the machines, but we also have medetomidine, nitazene, and xylazine strips in all the machines. And we want to make sure that we're able to do that we're able to actually respond to community needs as things change. And we have 2 more machines going up on Tuesday, which is exciting. And then a 6th machine will show up as soon as we can get some site prep done. But so we'll have another one at the Broad Rock Library, and we'll have one at the North Ave branch as well. So, yeah.
All right, and Jasmine, I want to invite you to kind of take us through some of the data on the harm reduction machines, so those of us who are a little nerdy can have fun with this.
Fun. So one good thing about this machine is that it allows us to collect a lot of really good data. And wow, this is kind of loud, but one thing that we wanted to do was collect zip codes. And of course it's optional for participants, but people have been given their zip codes. And as you all can see on the map, the darker colors indicate the zip codes that have like the most use. So y'all can see the 23223 has had a lot of use, and that goes towards Henrico as well. And that's also, you know, where the Marshall Plaza machine is. And hold on. Okay, and from what we saw, the hygiene supplies have been the most requested items from all 3 of the machines. The first aid kits, we've dispensed 961, and the wipes, we've dispensed 828. So those are pretty equal. And then as far as harm reduction supplies, the naloxone, we've dispensed 890 kits. And for fentanyl test strips, we've dispensed 333. I'm sure we'll see some increases for the other test strips soon, but those numbers were kind of low. And like I said earlier, the Marshall Plaza location has seen the most use. It could be because it's, next to DSS, and then the bus transfer hub is there as well. But after that, the Easton location has been pretty popular. We haven't seen a lot of traffic on the south side, so I know we're still trying to explore ways to make that work a little bit better. So yeah.
Thank you. And Anna and Jason, can you talk a little bit about just some of the barriers that you faced when trying to implement this project? I know there were quite a few, but if you could just kind of talk about how much of a slog it was to get this done.
It was just anything that could go wrong kind of did go wrong situation, right? Like, everything that we do with the city, everything has to go through a legislative process that then has to go through a signatory process, and it has to go through purchasing, and it has, there's just all of this sort of bureaucracy that's intended to ensure that we're good stewards of public funds. Sometimes it means that everything goes really, really slow. We had site prep issues, right? So it took forever to kind of get everything together. And then we go to order the machines, and they're like, all right, they should be ready to deliver in between 90 and 120 days. Like, cool. In that amount of time, we go check everything out, everything looks good, and then they get there and things aren't good, right? Like, the concrete slab was poured for one that it wasn't big enough. So then we had to take it back. Shout out to Caritas for letting us use their gigantic space to store these machines while we got our act together. So just that sort of comedy of errors kind of stuff. And then we do the big ribbon cutting, and then we have to deal with a lot of interesting social media comments and news comments. It was really funny. It was like you could do a very boring sociology paper on this. The responses on Instagram posts were like, I love my city, hands up, fucking high fives all over the place. And Facebook is like, you're giving free things to junkies. It was pretty funny. But slowly it's all started to, people feel really good about these machines, and as much as it's life-saving medications, which it 100% is, it's also these big billboards that say we as a city care about people who use drugs, right? Could we do this with newspaper boxes? Probably, as far as effectively delivering the medications, and it would definitely be less of a headache in a lot of ways. But this is a way that we can say as a community that we genuinely care about people who use drugs. So.
I just want to say thank you. And I am a business owner in the 23223 area who has also started a nonprofit, who started a drug group over there, and who ride around with Narcan in all my cars because I understand what's necessary. And I was ecstatic when I saw the machine. Because at the end of the day, my sons taught me a hard lesson. We're from Fulton. Like I said, I'm right there. I got a business right there by Creighton. And I hear the conversations, and I see the activity. And I moved my children to private school because I wanted to give them something different than what me and my husband had. But what I realized was I moved them to where the problem was even more easy to access. I was taking Narcan out my cars when my sons drive it and couldn't understand when I got back in my car why Narcan was in my car. And he overheard a Zoom meeting I was on, and him and his friends decided to call and have a conversation. He said, Mom, I put the Narcan in your car because all my friends get high. And he was 16. So I'm thinking that I'm saving him from a community, but I put him into a community where his friends and him are being rewarded with trips when one of the friends get a negative drug test. So the reality for me was what is highlighted in the community that I'm trying to save is happening everywhere. It's just that my community is being put on Front Street because we're easy to access and make it seem as if this underserved community is the only one with this problem. So yeah, you could have did it in a box, but what you showed the community was you're just as important and your safety is just as important as 23219. And I'm not gonna put your stuff in a box, I'm gonna put your stuff in a vending machine like everybody else stuff is. So you made them feel included, and I appreciate that.
James, let me respond. Thank you. I appreciate that. I live in the 23223 as well, right? And I used all over the city. And so I think the face of addiction and blight and poverty has been certain neighborhoods. We were really intentional about where we place these machines, right? None of this was by happenstance. None of this was just some casual, oh, we should do. The same way with our sites for outreach. We're intentional about where we serve these underserved and purposely ignored neighborhoods, right? And so I think this is where the conversation shifts, you know. Not in my backyard, you know, we don't do this, or the negative complaints that we get from most people about where we set up our harm reduction outreach sites have come from people who don't live in the neighborhoods. They're usually not black or brown people, but others who come for commercial gain into these neighborhoods. And so these are the people. Jason was doing outreach with us one day, and a business owner in the South Side brandished a weapon, right? And so these are the things that we go through from people who don't have any buy-in or ties or stakes to these neighborhoods. We got generations of families who've flourished there, who've lived without, the haves and the have-nots. I just spoke about this the other day, right? This is more than just machines for me. It's just way more than machines for me. And I'm really, really privileged to work amongst people. And there's some more of us too who get it, who understand why these are absolutely necessary to have behind the library on 25th Street. Shout out to Adam at the library, who has been, librarians and nurses for me, just do it for me, right? Adam, who has been like, Zico, you know, I need some more Sharps containers. Can you come and pick up? These are intentional conversations. None of this has happened by just proxy, right? You know, these are text threads. These are endless emails. And so this is important that your sons know why, you know. It doesn't, you know, it transcends all economic lines, ethnic lines, all of these things, and it's an issue. And for me, it's deeper because all of a sudden we have this opioid epidemic after Dope Sick. I've been knowing people who've lived with this until it crossed lines. And so shout out to John and Jason for putting together the Richmond Inclusive City. You know, we're the first city in North America to have that distinction. So, you know, there's a lot of different conversations that come out of these vending machines. There's a lot of data. Jasmine is such a nerd. She just randomly texts me different graphs and stats. I'm like, oh, okay, thanks, you know. And it's important, you know, because we do have to justify every single thing that we do. And we're very intentional down to the last penny about how it's spent and making sure that this is not boutique work. We don't do boutique work. We do absolute, authentic, and organic work at the state level, at the federal levels, and at local levels. And so all of this matters. All of it matters.
I do think that's a good segue too into kind of the future directions for the stuff that you all are going to be working on together too. So I think we have a little bit of time. Jasmine, if you want to do some more nerdy stuff and talk about some of the demographics around overdoses in Richmond.
Sure, Zico already led the way, but even though, the data has been telling us that overdoses have declined, unfortunately, there are certain communities that are still disproportionately affected by overdose deaths nationwide, statewide, and here in Richmond, we see that among our Black men, middle age 35 to 55. And it's also similar in our neighboring county, Henrico, as well. And Anna is going to share a little bit more about what we're doing and what the OAA is doing about that. I guess I can also say, there was 7 localities that were chosen for these funds. So that's Richmond, Henrico, Petersburg, Norfolk, Portsmouth, and I think Hampton, but yes. And these are mostly majority, minority localities. So I think that's something else important for us to note as well. So yeah, Anna. I think it's you, Anna, but
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
Is it?
Yeah, if y'all want to talk about kind of who benefits from the OAA funds currently, and I guess what y'all are trying to do with this project specifically.
Yeah, I'll give a quick background and then I'm gonna throw it over to you all. Okay. Operation Stop was a specific grant through OAA for those localities that have disproportionately high overdose fatality rates among adult Black men specifically. So also the communities that are disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. Although they didn't say that, but I'm saying that. So our response was to work closely with organizations that have deep and trusted relationships in those communities already. The city or the government isn't always the person. They have sometimes and oftentimes been the perpetrator of greater harm. So the work that we're doing now, I will probably throw it over to our partners to talk a little bit about Operation Stop.
Yeah, so Operation Stop is a project that's specifically giving access to substance use and treatment resources specifically to middle-aged Black men, because we know that that population in particular is the most likely in the city of Richmond and beyond to die of overdose. And something that we say in harm reduction and in these spaces all the time is every overdose is a policy failure, right? Well, that number, that discrepancy is a policy failure. And so what we're trying to do on a small scale, but within the city of Richmond, is to address that and to give access to treatment, housing, mental health resources, specifically to middle-aged Black men in the city. We just had our launch on, what was it? Last Tuesday on the 12th. We had Operation Stop Block Party where everybody that was involved in the grant came out. We provided boxed lunches. We had a DJ out there. We had cotton candy. We had everybody that was at the table on this grant out there providing resources and trying to connect all of our participants that come to our program to treatment and substance use resources. We have a lot of things planned at Health Brigade and beyond, and I'm gonna let Zico talk a little bit about those things.
This was so much fun. Some days this work can be really bleak and heavy and just really sad. I talk about this a lot when I present. I went to 21 funerals in 2021. That's insane, right? And so, we take the necessary things out to outreach. We take Ernest out. We do HIV, Hep C testing. Ernest has a rapport like no other with people because it starts with trust. And people do still deserve some normalcy. You do deserve some cotton candy. You do deserve a really good gourmet box lunch catered by Midnight Soul Food, who just fixed your lunch just now, too. So that's a shameless plug, right? And, free haircuts, music, seeing the faces of the people who work at City Hall, seeing them actually out in the field. That makes a difference, right? Because you're already told by society that, your life is not worth saving, punitive consequences, carceral systems, all these different things. And so this is just a love letter to the Black men in the city of Richmond, like, hey, we see you. We care about you, and here are some things that we can do to address these things. Because what I know is, I know a lot of black men, and I know that they've had to put on different facades of, I'm good, I'm okay. And it's okay to not be okay. And so the fact that so many men on the program love Colin, they love art, you know, just the different relationships that we have out in the community. And when someone finally does say, I need some help, can you help me? Isn't that the first step? Isn't that the first step? Isn't that the most important question, right? You know, can you help me? And so now we have these really tangible, practical supports, and we're partnering with all these other amazing, brilliant people. Tyler, you know, we just, you know, just all these different connections, because that's Atlantic Outreach. This is how it works. You know, none of us do this alone. And to most effectively, I'm drawing on the last presentation that Mark held. You know, someone mentioned, well, you know, I don't even know about these things. This is why we talk about it. This is why we partner with these very capable human beings, you know, like, hey, Health Brigade can't help you with that, but let me connect you with this very warm, personal handoff. You know, this is how we have to do it, because a lot of people on our program don't know how to access QR codes. That's really, really messed up if we don't take tangible, practical things out there for them to be able to resource these amazing things. The Sarah Center comes out with us. We're gonna make a way. We're gonna be able to connect you with in-person people. Peggy, these are the people that I rely on, right? You know, if I can't do it, if Colin isn't able to do it, hang on, let me give somebody a phone call who can help. And so this is how it begins. And so just the fact that we have so many different things planned. I'm so excited. You know, I'm having a luncheon for black men, the black men on the program, with some other guys who have this lived expertise, so that they can tell us, tell me what you need, right? I want to give you some power back. I want to, you reclaim your power. You tell me what you need. That's a question that we ask whenever people come up to the table. Oh, I don't know. Just give me everything. No, tell me what you need. Let's be really specific. Let me give you what you need. You don't have to just take whatever we have on this van. And so I think this is just deeper than needles and Narcan. I think this is about reclaiming power. I think it's about giving people some autonomy and some agency and giving them the real supports that they definitely deserve.
All right, I think we can kind of end with this big question and then have a conversation with everyone in the audience. But how can other community organizations gain access to the OAA funds so they can further their own ideas for community improvement?
I can start real quickly. I think just showing up. I would recommend finding your allies at the city. We haven't always had them at Health Brigade, but we have, like everybody on this panel, I have such a deep respect. I trust them with this program. I know where their values lie. Find somebody at the city that you trust and that has access to those resources, and then start showing up to the task force. And then that's what we did. That's what we did as Health Brigade, and that's how we got access to these funds, is we just started showing up. So know the worth of your program. Speak to the value of the work that you do, because I know there's a lot of people. I know a lot of people in this room. I see the work you do. Yeah, just start showing up. Sometimes it's not my favorite part of the work. Going to a task force meeting isn't always.
He loves it. He loves to go.
It's not my personal favorite part of the work, but it's necessary to be in the rooms, to have these conversations, and to figure out and advocate for where this money should go. You know what I mean? This is important. If you talk about the narrative around the opioid epidemic, and actually being able to take that narrative and take that fund and put it into the city of Richmond, to where it really matters and where an epidemic has been for so long and never talked about, that's really important and really powerful. And you have to be in that room talking about it.
Task force is a great one. I will say we opened up this year our first open application for opioid settlement funds in the city. So we just closed to grant out $700,000 to community organizations, and we're going to make this an annual process. We're working through exactly what that looks like right now, and I think that there's a lot of areas for growth. One, having a compensated community advisory board that has decision-making power. And two, being able to compensate your subject matter experts who serve on that review board as well. And then also working with organizations let me say this, like having the capacity to build up smaller grassroots organizations and support them in applying for more regulated funds like city money, helping them build out data capabilities so that we're able to get these money to folks who have been doing the work for a really long time. Okay, perfect. I was gonna say, because it's important for all of our localities to be accountable to the communities that we serve, we need to have a public forum to be able to post our investments. For the city, on our opioid response page at rva.gov, we post all of our opioid settlement investments with like a short paragraph so folks can get the general gist. And we also link the legislation that passed it, which means if you are so inclined, you can read the grant contract, you can see the amount, you can see the terms, you can see the performance measures, and we'll continue to do this, right? The Virginia Opioid Abatement Authority also has information about the investments it makes. It's not always the funnest afternoon, but it's important, right? And if you're gonna show up to these rooms, the more information that you have and the more background you have, the more you're able to push for the solutions that you know are effective in your community. And I will just plug, next week on Wednesday, 10:30 to 12, VCU Health Hub in Churchill, we're having a meeting. We're having our opioid task force, so come out. I would love to see everybody there. It's open to the public always. And yeah, come talk to us.
Yeah, we meet every month. We alternate between in-person and virtual for people who can't make the meetings. The one thing that I want to say is sort of a disclaimer / something that neither one of us, Anna or I, love about this process, but it's difficult for us to fund small organizations because we're working under the city umbrella, right? So we have to live by the same sort of practices and rules that we do when we're using taxpayer money. So the monies that we're involved with, it's blood money, just to be blunt, right? But we're still under those same auspices, right? So there are some barriers for smaller orgs, but we're working on that because it's super important. But we had a few people who applied for that grant cycle that just went through. They're like, God, what could we have done better? Like nothing. Like people who were unfunded. It's like we just had a lot of really, really, really good proposals. There's a lot of great people doing really great work. But our job is to do what we can to help shepherd that process so that the people who are most affected and least cared for are the ones that are actually receiving the benefits of this money. So it's hard.
All right, well, I think we'll close out and then have time for just open questions with the panelists. But yeah, thank you so much, Jason, Anna, Colin, Zico, and Jasmine. And James. And yeah, so basically, I don't see any questions on Zoom. So if there are in-person questions, we will go around the room, offer the microphone. Please wait till you have the mic to ask your question. All right.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you for the shout out. Second of all, I'd like to say I like going to the task force meeting. My question is essentially for like the other localities in Virginia, specifically regarding the Opioid Abatement Authority process. For counties, because it's kind of like a spectrum. Some people have applied to their funding. Some people haven't applied at all. Some people have like multiple grants. For the counties who are kind of intimidated by this process, whether that is forming the connections with their health department or their local community organizations, what steps would you suggest to them and how to go about that? Sorry, that's a loaded question.
if it's possible, compensate somebody to do that work solely. It's a lot of work. And shout out to Jen in Chesterfield. And when other counties have a representative who works solely on opioid settlement funds, it's so nice and easy to be able to put that labor together to like form collaborative projects. So like compensate somebody to do that labor because it's a lot, and that can help you move forward. You're the toolkit manager, the OAA toolkit manager. So that reach out for technical assistance. Look across the nation. Folks have been doing harm reduction work for 1 million years. So if you don't know where to look to start, you can start with the National Harm Reduction Coalition. You can look at the Drug Policy Alliance. You can look at a lot of places. Remedy Alliance. Yeah, National Black Harm Reduction. Anything else?
I just want to say, because I know Dia has her hand up, I want to just publicly say this to Anna and Jason. Thank you, thank you, thank you, because this has been, at one time, we didn't know if we were going to still have a program, right? Just continually getting different emails and conversations with our executive director, Zico, don't worry. I'm like, should we worry? When this whole new administration rolled in and things were being slashed. I do consultancy for NASDAQ. Things were being slashed, right? And so when I used to ask Karen Legato, like, hey, should we start looking to consolidate these supplies that we put into the bag? And she said no. And Anna and Jason, y'all have been like right there with us. You come to Health Brigade, you're in these group chats, and I appreciate what y'all do. I don't know, y'all aren't that public facing, you're really admin, you're in these really lofty ivory towers and at City Hall, but y'all come out and you do the work. There hasn't been one ask that we've had of y'all that you haven't done. So this is the work that happens, I think, that people don't really realize, when we as coordinators have to tell our team, hey, we really don't know what's about to happen. If y'all need to look elsewhere, we'll write you a good rec letter. And this is where this work really, really shows up. And I just wanted to say that to y'all publicly because I appreciate y'all.
Yeah. Y'all are stellar. And you too, Jasmine. Because when we talk about having allies everywhere in government, in the health departments, not all health workers are created equal, and we really appreciate how much you trust and support us and our voice and lift up our voice. It's really important. Yeah. Thank you so much.
So as we talk about funding, this is a finite resource, right? Like sooner or later, it's going to run out. So has the city started putting any thought around what's going to happen when these funds go away and how we're going to continue the work that was started through these funds?
Well, that's in 2042. So no, I'm just joking.
Well,
it is extremely real.
I could be alive then. You
I
never
know. I don't know where I will be in that year. No, it's super important. And part of it, and what is really nice to have folks like VDH and VCU doing program evaluation is you're really able to make the case to say, hey, this really worked locally. This is worth the investment. This is worth general fund investment. And this has given us the opportunity to pilot a lot of things. I think the conversations we have are around braided funding approaches as the money winds down, right? But this is a great opportunity to, and in the harm reduction space, it's always been do as much as you can right now, do the best that you can. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I think this gives us an opportunity to uplift programs that are doing tremendous work and make a really strong case for the worthiness.
Yeah, and shout out to VCU Health, who's also doing some research on this specific grant. So we're going to actually have some numbers at the end of this to actually show the work and how we do. So shout out to Tyler and
I
our
love
team.
numbers.
And I was just going to say that one of the things that we do ask for, it's not mandatory, but in a lot of these application processes, we ask for people's sustainability plan, right? So what we want to be able to do is, as much as it depends. But one of the things that we like to do is say, all right, here's money. It's going to be hard for you to get this off the ground, but once you get it going, then there's a way that you can have the funds coming in to support it, whether that's billing Medicaid or whatever for these different programs. So allowing people some money to get going so that then they can figure out a sustainability plan inside themselves. And very much to reiterate what Anna said, having an opportunity to look at numbers and data and be like, this works?
I'd love to hear your long-term dreams for this work, these programs, like supplies you'd love to have access to, bureaucracy you'd love to be eradicated, anything like that.
Funny enough, Anna and I were just talking about a drug checking machine. So that would be something lovely to have, but there's a lot of stigma and policy issues with that. But yeah, small dream.
I think what you want one of us to say, Kaylee, is a drop-in center, right? We talk about drop-in centers, but me and you have talked about drop-in centers before too, right? I would love to see us be able to do something that, look, when I pass by the Arthur Ashe Center, I'm like, what are we doing with this building? We could do laundry in here. We could have showers. We could have a peer bank of these amazing peers right here connecting people to SNAP benefits, Medicaid, all these different things, I would love to see like one of these unused, really huge city buildings being used for things like this. I look at On Point, Prevention Point. I look at all these different programs and what they're doing. And so, yeah, like Mike Fatula asked me about 2 years ago, Zico, if you could wave a magic wand, what would you do? These are the things that I would do. Most of the people who we encounter, who call me or who inbox me are like, Ms. Zico, I need to take a shower. Where can I go? So St. Paul's Church has been this huge resource for us. We test at St. Paul's Church over on Creighton Boulevard. So I think it's just continuing the community partnerships that we do have until we do get these spaces where people can come and do their laundry, can come and talk to a live human being instead of going on Common Help. No shade to Common Help if there's somebody in here who works on that. But sometimes you just need this connection, right? Because a lot of my participants don't have smartphones. So these are the things that I think about, like accessible brick and mortar places for people to take care of their everyday things that a lot of us take for granted.
Yeah, I don't know that I have this kind of long-term vision, and I think that part of what I like is something that or part of what I want is something that we're building already, which is multi-organization, multi-individual, collaborative spaces where we can address a lot of these things, because substance use doesn't exist in a silo like we know. That's something that we talk about here at Research to Recovery, and that I find out in different sectors all the time, how it's connected to autism, how it's connected to housing, how it's connected to mental health, other mental health challenges. And so I think continuing to, while we over here are focusing on specifically the issue of, in some of these projects, overdose within the city, how is overdose connected to these other things? Access to housing, access to mental health, and food insecurity, how people are being pushed out of the city through development, and how can we continue to think about specifically about this thing that we care so much about? Because when my team goes out every week, we get told of people that have died every single day. Right. So our focus has to be on overdose, because that is our charge. But we also know, and again, huge shout out to our team. We love you so much. Give them a round of applause. Joe, we see you there in the back hiding. Ray, our volunteer. Kaylee, our former volunteer. Lauren. Hey, Lauren. But I think it's just really the vision is to like continue to build collaborative spaces where we can kind of address these things not in isolation, but together.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if we have the magic wand out, safe consumption sites.
There you go. All right, yeah, I think that's a good place to stop. So let's give one more round of applause for our panelists.